Guys, there's a few things I didn't tell you in the budget, but before we get into all of that, I just wanted to show you the power of property. As you can see from this WhatsApp, I messaged the agent on Friday asking would they take 65,000 cash for this property. Do you know what the reply was? The reply was, Niven, this property was on 2 years ago, no wonder you thought it was a bargain. We had an influx of calls because of our IT system mistakenly uploaded loads of properties that are sold even before I started. And I asked him when he started, he said 2 years ago. The property was 70k, I tried to get it for 65. The comparables were 130 as it was. Now, that's 2 years ago. That shows you power of property. He said the phones were non-stop. So if we know that that's the power of property, why are we not buying that now? Because in 2 years we know the price would increase so much, and if we put it back on the market for the same price we bought it for, the phones would be non-stop. That's my point. That's the power of property. That's the Northwest. Let's get into the bits of the budget that you don't know about and how you can still make money in 2025, make thousands of pounds from property and change your life. Guys, as I said, that comparable was 130k now. The same property on the same road, which I could have got for 70k 1.5, 2 years ago, is now 130k without doing anything. That's without the rental income. Now, I'm used to getting these deals. That's why I even offer 65 instead of 70. But these are the kind of deals you should be buying. Always buying below market value property. That's the same whether this would have been a good budget, a bad budget for property investors. It's always the same. Always buy below market value property. It reduces the risk that you're overpaying. And certainly now with the increases of stamp duty across the board, which I'll get into in a minute and tell you what I didn't tell you in the budget, there's a chance that it will depress house prices. Not reduce them drastically, but depress them. And now the main risk of your risk capital is your opportunity cost. What else could you spend that money on to make money in the fastest way possible? If the house price is depressed and you can't rely on prices going up, doubling every 2-3 years, what can you rely on? One, buying in the right locations, as I said here, Northwest. Number two, buying below market value, which removes this risk, because on day one, you know you're getting it for 30, 40k below market value, you're putting all your money out, and is a house price going to drop 30, 40k? No, it's not. When I say depressed house prices, I mean you're not going to get the massive increases in some areas, but it's certainly not going to drop. So buying below market value not only reduces your risk of overpaying, it actually puts more money back into your portfolio, into your pot, to go and buy another asset and do exactly the same thing and grow your portfolio. I've said this on numerous videos. Every single week I say the same thing, buy below market value. And guys, 10% is not below market value. I saw somebody post on Instagram the other day saying they've got a really good deal, 10% below market value. That's not below market value, is it? Because by the time you take your solicitor costs, your increased stamp duty costs, your legal costs, and then even if you forget about all those costs, even if you buy it and say that's all included, it's still 10k below market value. When you come to remortgage it, it's going to cost a broker fee, remortgage fee, solicitor costs. Where's the 10k? It's going to be 5k, it's nothing. So I don't mean 10k below, I don't mean getting a house for 140k when it's worth 150. I mean, if it's worth 150, getting it for minimum 125, if not around that price. So you've got enough meat, enough slice of that pie to get your money out and potentially buy another one. So that's what I'm talking about. Now, before I go more into this, what they've not told you on the budget, guys, and what a lot of property guys haven't told you because they probably don't know, and I'm not diminishing anyone's YouTube channel, any property influencers take on property, but the amount of misinformation I've seen where they're confused about the 2% increase in the surcharge, it's not that difficult to grasp that instead of paying 3% surcharge, you're now paying 5%. It's an increase of 2%. The amount of misinformation is incredible. But here we are, you're getting the absolute knowledge on this. If anyone's got any discrepancies, put them below in the comment, but I've checked and rechecked these facts. So what they haven't told you, and what not a lot of commentators have told you, probably because they haven't looked into it that much, because they're not actively buying like I am, is stamp duty was reduced after COVID by Rishi Sunak, and it was done a stamp duty holiday. Now, as investors buying in limited companies, which I always advise, we've been paying the 3%. That didn't apply to us, so we've been paying the 3% up to a certain amount, up to 150k. Well, up to 250k actually, I think it was. Now, that is, they haven't told you in the budget, but that's getting removed in April. So it's not actually an increase in tax, it's just going back to the way it was before COVID. Now, what that means is because there's now a surcharge of the surcharge from 3% is increased by 2%, so effectively a 5% surcharge on first-time buyer rates. Now, what that means is, from April 2024, if you're buying as an investor additional home or limited company, etc., whatever, it's all the same thing, i.e. you're not a first-time buyer, you'll be paying 5%. So at the moment you're paying 5% up to 125. You'll now be paying 5% because it's reverted back to the original pre-COVID rates. You're paying 5% plus the 2% surcharge from 125 to 250k. So to say that again, you're paying 7% between 125 and 250k, and up to 125 you're paying 5%. So, and then you get the additional 2% because all the bands are going back to the way they were. So 7%, guys, from 125k to 250k. Guys, the average deal is between 125 and 250k. Yes, we do get properties for 130, 135, but it's still slip into that zone. Now, obviously, if you're buying down south as well, that's going to be impacted massively because obviously you're not going to get a house for 125 or not even 250k down south. So that 7% is going to hit your margins quite a lot. So everyone's saying, oh, it's 5%, but it's not. It's actually 7% from April. So what you need to do, guys, is buy before. Try and make as much money between now and April as possible. Because now we know this, we don't have to be reactionary. We are to an extent reactionary, but we can plan for it and try and get all our purchases before. Now, well done, especially guys on this channel. Well done to my clients who bought property this year and beat the increases. I've probably done about 15 to 20 purchases for clients minimum over the last 6-7 months, and they've all beat this increase. Now, even though no one knew about this increase, I've always said on this channel, the best time to buy a property is today, okay? Now, as you can see, the government has shown this to be true once again. All the clients who bought properties before last week have all spoken to me and said, look, I would have had to pay X amount extra for the same property, for the same rental return. Yes, they're really good deals, but it would have cost them more. Guys, this is property since the 1900s, you know, after the Great Depression. It's always the best time to buy is today. So now, any clients onboarding now are obviously going to be paying more now to the properties, but the thing is we are negotiating better as well, especially with landlord stock. But the fact remains that the best time to buy the property was at the start of the year, right? And I say that every year. Next year it'll be the start of this year was the best time to buy. So bear that in mind, guys. We've also got now, and a lot of clients, I've got a lot of clients coming from down south from London, even before this budget, saying, look, the yields are not good down south. They can get a lot more for the money up in Manchester, for example, where I'll show you the article on the screen now. It's actually the second most unaffordable city in the UK, or the first most. And you can still get properties for, what did we get last? What have I got? 135k, for example. So, and that's going into a HMO. So that's the kind of property we're buying now. The reason is you've got a two-tier property market now because of the stamp duty change. So imagine 7% on 400k down south, because the average property is probably about 400k. Not in London, that's outside of London. You can see how, for an investor, it doesn't even make sense even more now, whereas even before this budget it didn't, but now they're paying 7% extra, and it will definitely bring them into this category. Whereas up north, we could still maybe get 150, so you're only paying 7% on that little 25k increase from 125k, because remember, it's tapered, so it doesn't apply to the full balance. So it's a two-tier property market. Guys, if you want to buy in the north and the northwest, where growth is happening all the time, for like I showed you on here in the northwest, and the rental is still good, and the yields are still high, and you can remortgage out, and you don't have to pay ridiculous amounts of stamp duty every time you buy a property, get in the comments, click yes, comment yes, and I'll send you a free property investment guide, and that shows you where I'm buying, what I've done for clients, and where we're targeting properties in the Northwest, and it's just completely free. And if you want to work with us again, just click on the link below. But you've literally got a two-tier property market now. So to be honest, quite frankly, buying in London for buy-to-let doesn't make sense anymore. Whether you're buying a limited company or not, it certainly now doesn't make sense, okay? I'm all for property, but at the same time, you've got to be realistic. Are you going to buy in London, or you better off putting your money in Bitcoin if you're going to buy in London? So that's what you've got to see, because the time period of getting that stamp duty back in London is, you're going to have to get it back from the rent, and the yields are so low, like 5% or less, that, you know, probably like 3-4% to be fair on a good deal. It's going to take you years to even get that stamp duty payment. Remember, you can't borrow it, you can't leverage it either. So just to get that stamp duty payment back, it's going to take you years. Are properties going to double in London? No, they're not. It's starting from a very high base. So I'm all for property. I'm a realist on this channel. I'm not just going to say property for the sake of it. As you know, I'm a very real person. I'm telling you now, it's not worth buying property in London for buy-to-let investment. Now, if you're parking cash, if you're Hong Kong, you're from the UAE, you've got Russian money, yes, it's a store of wealth. You need to get rid of a million or whatever you need to get rid of. It's a very good store of wealth, safe store of wealth. It's a relatively safe country. There's no political risk. There's no civil war risk to an extent. So although that we've seen that. But yeah, it's relatively safe, especially compared to other jurisdictions. A lot of people buy in Dubai, but you know, Dubai, the government can change overnight. So when people park large amounts of money, they tend to do it in Europe. And by Europe, I mean UK, Ireland, Spain. Spain's a massive example of that, well, Marbella itself. So that's totally different, guys. That's parking wealth, that's not creating wealth, and property can do both. So going back to the risk capital, which I was talking about, so now you've got your risk capital. What you're doing now is the job of a director of a property company is to allocate capital. You've got a pot of money, whether you've saved it or you've earned it from other properties. You need to allocate that money in the best way possible to change your life and to look after your family and your future. So you're allocating capital. How do you do this in 2024, 2025? You've got to look at the opportunity cost. So as I said, what's the opportunity cost of buying this property? How quickly am I going to get my deposit back? I like to go for at least 2 years, if not within 6 months, and remortgage out, buying below market value. Few risk. A good thing is legislative risk has now been reduced because we all know what's coming in the renters reform bill. So there's no risk now. It's already there. We just have to change our sails to manoeuvre that way and to go around it. But there's no risk. There's no risk that next year there's going to be a new renters reform bill, for example. So that's kind of gone now. You've got increased rent. The risk is obviously house prices won't grow as much as they will now because of the stamp duty, and typically when they put transactional costs up, prices get depressed and just don't grow as much. So you can't just rely on forcing capital appreciation by refurbs or buying and getting a 10k off and next year it'll be worth 10k more. What you've got to be doing is getting at least 25 to 30% below market value. Guys, we're sourcing these properties all the time, even now, so it's hard. Guys, the funny thing is with my business, whenever these legislative changes, and it's been like that from 2010, even when Brexit came, I thought, oh, the HMOs are going to be empty now. Guys, we're busier than ever. And this change, with my trading business, where we get in properties as our cash buying company and giving it on to clients, is actually, we're selling properties faster now. Even after the budget, I was scared to put anything out. Client contacted me and he bought a property within 2 hours. And I thought another sourcer would have sold it to somebody else. Now, that is because below market value, most people are getting 10%. We're getting 25, 30% below market value, even more. So yes, they're paying more on stamp duty, but they're still going to make 30, 40k. Do you see what I mean? And some of them are flipping it, some of them are keeping it and remortgaging out and getting a rent. One thing is guaranteed, the increased rent. That is pretty much guaranteed. Wages are going up. There's less supply in the market. When there's less supply of a necessity, if there was only one food shop in the UK, there would be no competition. Prices would be higher. That's why the Competition Markets Authority highly regulate the supermarkets in the UK to make sure that prices are fair. Now, you don't have this really as landlords, and as I said, they're trying to get rid of small landlords to allow bigger players such as your Tesco-style operators in the landlord space, and what that will do is increase the rent, obviously, of properties. Now, I was actually, in the last video, I actually stated that I suspected that was the case. I'd been reading, just before I started this video, the bill, And I was just scrolling down quickly, and it actually states the effect of this stamp duty increase, not even a renters' rights bill, the stamp duty increase is to discourage additional home buying, to discourage property investment in effect. So why would they try and discourage additional home buying if there's a rental crisis and a homeless crisis and there's not enough social housing? Why would they try and discourage investment in property? It is called, so they're discouraging it. So I'll think of the word in a minute, but disincentivize. That is literally what it says in the bill, disincentivize. So there's no incentives for the average person to be a landlord or buy another home. Why would you do that if there's a rental crisis? Well, as I said, and I suspected, I'm obviously proved right in the bill that they do want properties, but they want the bigger corporate landlords. And what that means is that the rents will go up. Now, I was watching another video from something completely different about wealth management and expats and people moving abroad. It was a capitalist perspective. And what was really interesting in that is that they said that big capital corporate companies make it very difficult to compete in a Western economy. They skew the market and the market is rigged against you. And the reason is the big companies, the big landlords, the big hedge funds, banks, etc., they're the ones who go and have dinner, take the ministers out, give them their opinion and basically sway decisions and kind of lobby decisions. So, you know, the average landlord down the road with a sofa on top of his car, driving to do a check-in, is not going to be taking a minister out for dinner and going, oh, do you know what I think you should do? I think you should disincentivise landlords so that I can buy 1,000 homes. Then it's not going to happen, is it? Whereas the big landlords, the corporate landlords, will do that because they think from a long-term perspective. And that's what we need to be doing. So we need to be thinking, look, don't panic. It's clear where it's going. Yes, we're disincentivized from one viewpoint, but if we're buying below market value, getting all our money back out, there's very little risk and the rent is guaranteed to go up, guys. So that's what I would say in that. So what you need to be doing now, you need to be buying up north, cheap as possible, below market value, and as fast as possible before this comes in. Because obviously prices within an inflationary environment as Labour is tax and spend, assets will go up. And as I said, under previous Labour governments, people with assets have always won, and the property is one of the main assets. So make sure you're buying because it's due to obviously be inflation. You can still leverage it. Your cost of debt will be lower because when inflation happens, your debt remains the same, but the asset increases. So Labour's creating this environment, and you can actually get very wealthy from it if you buy the right properties. Now, what I'm saying here is one of the main risks is buying, again, I've seen a sponsored ad on a property guru's Instagram, shouting about an 85 grand property up in Middlesbrough, I think it was near Newcastle, somewhere like that, northeast. And it's a really good investment because you put 30k down and you get £300 a month. That was before the stamp duty increase, so it'd be even more now. Guys, £300 a month is not what I'm talking about here. It's not going to change your life. It's not worth it. From a risk capital perspective and a capital allocation perspective, £300 a month, you're better off putting it somewhere else, not property. Okay, what I'm talking about is buying properties that make you £1,000 a month and you get 5 of them and you're on 5k a month. And you can remortgage out. Now, that deal didn't even have a remortgage element. It was literally, you put 30k in and you get 300k a month. So I would never invest in a deal like that unless there was a high chance of capital appreciation. But as I said, it's depressed house prices. You can't bank on that. Even in Manchester, I mean, that wasn't in Manchester. Manchester might take the punt, but you can't bank on that now. So you're better off buying below market value or putting your money somewhere else. Okay, just being real with you guys. It's not always property. Guys will sell it because they're making more money selling courses than they are from property. I make very little I don't sell courses, but I make very little in proportion from clients. Then my portfolio is very big. So, well, it's relatively big for an individual. Nothing compared to your corporate landlords, but we're buying all the time, but we're buying the right properties. And I'll hold back. I won't buy for the sake of it anymore. Whereas you could before buy for the sake of it, but that's kind of stopped it now, guys, as you can see. So, as I said, two-tier property market, capital allocation is key. Make sure you buy as much as you can before April 2025. I don't know why I put 24 there, it's 25. The only mistake I made today. But That's what you need to be doing, guys. As I said, no legislative risk now. The only risk is capital allocation, risk capital, where you put in the money. Don't be putting monies into silly deals where you make very little money. £300 a month when inflation hits is what you're going to spend that on. So, guys, that's it for today. Stay tuned. Help me out. Click yes. Help me out. Like, comment, and subscribe. We had 7.1k views on the budget video, and that's amazing, guys. But I've only got 1.2k subscribers. So there's a lot of people watching. And if you want to stay tuned and make sure that I help you in your property journey, not even just property, but just to become wealthy and escape the rat race, escape the matrix, click subscribe so you don't miss another video. But that's it for today, guys.